Lisbeth. How are you today?
I'm amazing. Happy New Year.
Oh, Happy New Year to you. I know you are amazing, especially with this very lovely vest that you have on today. It's very cozy. Um, Before we get started, I'm super excited to talk to you today. But before we get started, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself? Like, who are you and what you do?
Sure. So I am a woman on a mission to help women overcome the fear, pain, and anxiety of cervical dystonia, a rare neurological disorder, so they can live with more ease, joy, confidence, and fun. And I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with my two fur babies and my amazing hubby, and we have two amazing chitlins, which are children.
That's
And we're empty
awesome.
nesters.
Oh my God, you're empty nesters. That's crazy. I'm gonna
Yes,
be that soon, so I might have to get some tips. Um,
it's yeah, it's amazing.
can you just briefly, very briefly, tell me what cervical dystonia is? Because I looked it up, but I have no idea.
Yes, I would be humbled too. So cervical dystonia is a rare neurological disorder. And basically, in a nutshell, there is a part of your brain that's responsible for telling your body how to move. And this specifically, cervical dystonia, affects the head and the neck and the shoulders. And so what happens is, for whatever reason, we're not sure, the brain is getting the communication or the signals that it needs to constantly contract. So the muscles of the head and the neck and shoulders are in a constant, like a Charlie horse, more or less. It doesn't ever stop. So that's one of the manifestations of this illness or this condition. And also it can cause repetitive movements, and it can also you can get stuck in certain positions. And so it is, the thing about dystonia that can be so overwhelming is that no two people present the same.
Hmm.
And it creates a lot of physical tension, a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort. And it's a very interesting disorder because it's very visible for some people.
Mm-hmm.
So in a nutshell, that's what it is. And there's no cure. And the only FDA approved treatment are botulinum toxin injections, which
Wow.
those just, paralyze the muscles. So
Yeah.
that's it in a nutshell.
Wow. And so for people that don't know, botulinum is Botox, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that but I want to ask you some other things first because I just didn't know. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people that maybe have that, but also don't know since it is so rare, they don't know who to talk to. So
Mhm.
that's really cool that you do that. And I'm sure that it comes out of a personal experience. Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Well, I would love for you to tell us more about that in a little bit. But first of all, the reason why I wanted to talk to you today is because you have this amazing, abundant light about you. And you obviously have worked to be positive and to look ahead and to really celebrate. And so I guess I want to talk about like, what is how did you get involved in thinking about manifesting, celebrating, choosing words and things like that? How did that start for you? And what did you learn first?
So just to rewind back, so I am a registered nurse for 25 years, and I'm just a helper and a healer by nature. I like to share things with people that
Mhm.
feel good and juicy. And so, gosh, this was way back, like 2010 or something. I was doing work that I love, working in a hospital, and I had recently become certified to teach yoga. And even though I was part-time, I was like, I feel so trapped. I want to be able to teach yoga whenever I want to teach it. And I felt kind of like pulled in two different directions.
Mm.
And so I went on this journey to seek why. Okay, I have a great job. I have an amazing family. I'm very healthy. I've been into health and wellness my entire life. Why do I feel so bad?
Mm.
Why do I feel so unfulfilled? And I was like, and then on top of feeling bad, I felt guilty for wanting something different.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, okay, so anyway, I went on this journey, and what I discovered was that I was spiritually bankrupt. And very simply, what that means to me is that, like, I grew up going to church, all these things. I believe in a higher power. Yet, like, if I felt supported by something greater, why do I feel so bad? Like, what? There's some gap here. And so that's when I just started like asking questions of like, well, if there is a higher power, if I do believe in this thing called, I call it spirituality. To me, that just means a connection with something that feels supportive to me. Doesn't matter what label you use, God, Allah, Jesus, whatever. And so I just started paying a lot more attention to my environment, what I was taking in with my physical senses, my eyes, my ears. Who was I listening to? What was I watching? What was I thinking? And I realized that, like, this higher power was really me, and I call it higher self. And when I started to talk to her, what I realized was she has this 30,000 foot view of me and my life, and she knows where I'm going. And she taught me that nothing, no thing, no person, no experience is an accident. It's all for me. And if I can come from that vantage point, it's way more empowering. It's way juicier. It does feel more supportive. So it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, so if I have this connection, this also means I have all the answers. Like, they're already here. Because in my experience, the reason I felt unfulfilled was because I felt like there was something outside of me that would help me feel whole, or that would help me feel I have arrived, or like status, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started paying attention. So then I started seeing things like repeating numbers. And today is 111. And 111, I mean, if you're into things like numerology, it's just everything is a frequency and energy. So I started seeing these numbers every time I looked at the microwave, my clock, my computer, my phone. And it was like, well, what does this mean? I was just became curious. And so these are what I would call signs from this higher power, my higher self, that like, you're on the right track. You're all good. This is, and again, when you come from a place of curiosity and compassion, it completely changes your vantage point, whatever you want to call it, your frequency. And so when you go from down here of like, I'm not supported, why am I not fulfilled, to so victim, to, oh my gosh, I'm starting to notice all of these things and they're so fun. And I don't need these things. However, they make me feel better. They make me feel like, yes, we do have your back. You're going in the right direction. And so then that's when I started learning about law of attraction, manifestation, and very simply, law of attraction simply means that which is likened unto itself is drawn. You've heard that saying, birds of a feather flock together.
Mm-hmm. Or like
So
it's like.
yeah, or misery loves company. Like, so the spectrum of negative and positive, or fear and love, it's all on a spectrum, right? And to me, I believe we only have two emotions, love or fear. Like, that's really, like, we have a huge spectrum. It's just, we're either going towards love or towards fear at all times. You can't do both at the same time. And so then I started learning about, well, what is this manifestation stuff? And manifestation is basically, in my experience, because I have studied neuroscience, quantum physics. I'm a huge Joe Dispenza fan, Louise Hay, Bruce Lipton, all of these bright, very intelligent people. And basically, what I learned from all the studies is that at all times, well, everything is energy. And energy, another word for energy is like a wave or a particle. And at all times, all possibilities exist at the same time. So let's say I have this condition. Well, all possibilities exist while I have this condition, that there could be a different experience. There could be a different manifestation of this cervical dystonia. And if I intend and I desire for myself to have a different experience of this condition, in that moment when I decide, basically this wave or this particle collapses, and the one thing that I want to experience becomes evident.
Okay, we have to stop there because that boggles my mind. And I have, read a lot about manifestation and quantum physics, but that part, just like when I first learned about duality and non-duality, that boggled my mind for years. I feel like I kind of got that. But now what you just said is like, whoa, okay, so can you repeat that again? When you are
Let me give you a practical example that will anchor
Yes.
this in for the human part of our existence. Okay, so let's say, okay, so what is today? Thursday. So it's Thursday. Let's pretend I'm just waking up. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm waking up, and upon my waking, I have a dozen things that I could possibly do. Every dozen thing that I choose to do is going to have a specific outcome or consequence, let's say. Let's just give the example. I could either roll over and turn off my alarm and get up. That's going to have a different result or consequence. If I press snooze and I roll over and I go back to sleep, that is going to have a different outcome or consequence. So at all times, when I wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, every choice that I make has a different experience or potential associated with it. And so when I say energy is a wave, there's infinitesimal or infinite possibilities of what could possibly happen in a day, in the body, in a conversation. And so we, the human, if we want to have an influence on how our day goes or how our health changes or shifts or manifests, another thing about quantum physics is there's something called the observer effect. Your observation of something, a glass of water, a conversation, what your child is doing, your expectation of what you expect to see influences the behavior of what you're watching.
Got it.
So
if you think your kid is not going to take out the trash, well, he's just not.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So I'm just here to share the message that it could seem, it can seem unbelievable because we have been raised on the Newtonian model that there's cause and effect, and that everything is specific and A plus B is C. And it's like, no. At all times, there are infinite number of possibilities. And in the moment that we decide, boom, it's like, do I want A or B? When you say, I want B, the wave particle for A shuts down and B manifests. It raises up. It's like, yep, we're chosen. And so that's why when people cannot make a decision and they're wishy-washy, it feels absolutely horrific, because this. And
It's
the
like
moment
you're
you
getting
decide,
pulled.
yes,
Yeah.
the moment you commit and you claim what you want and you're like, yes, the universe, quantum field rises up to bring you the people, the resources, the health, the money, the energy, the bandwidth, the car, the time. And so and the other thing about quantum physics and the mind is that, people know we have not everybody knows, but we have the conscious mind, that's our waking mind. Like, people are knowing, they're listening to a conversation. Okay, I'm conscious of this. And our conscious mind is filtered by our life experience. We have memories, we have ideas, we have preferences, we have the subconscious mind. It's yes or no. There is no filter. So if your subconscious will take what you tell it as full truth every time. It doesn't have a filter, which is why if a person has been told, God bless the people that are raising us, they're doing the best they can with what they have, and it's 222. So I just take that as a sign. We're talking about what we're supposed to be talking about.
Uh-huh.
If we are told, Elizabeth, you're just a little too noisy. You're just a little too much. Like you need to just tone it down a little bit. Okay. Well, if I keep hearing that over and over and over, and I tell myself, well, you know what they say, you're just too big for people. You're too loud for people. Well, that causes me to take that as my belief. And so your subconscious is responsible for 95% of your intellect, and it is what creates your life experience. So if I have that subconscious belief, until I work to get rid of that belief, and I know that is not my truth, I will continue to be told, you need to slow down, you're just being a little too loud. And so it's so the mind is so wonderful, especially when you know how to work with the nuance and the subtle energy, which is what everything is.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, hold on, pause for just a second, because I
Okay.
think that is, you touched on so many things that I want to go back to. Like way back in the beginning, you said your first step when you like realized that you were like, why, I've got all the things, I'm connected to some sort of spirituality, I'm a nurse, I've got a family, everything feels good, but I don't feel right, right? So you said your first step was awareness, basically.
Yep.
And it was awareness of place and things around you. And then you secondly said you got curious. And I really am grateful that you said that, because oftentimes, like when we think we want to change something, we often start to name what it is that needs to be changed, or we start to name like what it is we have to do. There's the doing. And when we instead approach it from curiosity, that's when we get to tap into that inner knowing, or that spiritual knowing, or the higher power, or the guidance from, like you said, from yourself or from other. And it becomes not that we're like driving the bus, but we're allowing the bus to be driven. So I loved that you said that. And so thank you for that. And one thing that came up for me in everything that you're saying was this idea that there's infinite abundance. And I think that there is a limiting belief for many that says, if I succeed, then you can't. Or if you succeed, then I can't, because there isn't enough room out there. And you actually just said that, when we choose what we want, things behind it and around it, the energy and everything aligns behind that to get us what we want. So to me, that says infinite abundance. There is enough energy, there's enough abundance, there's enough prosperity, there's enough healing to go around. Is that how you feel too?
Absolutely. And because of the physical laws of the universe, law of attraction is a physical law of the universe. Whatever you focus on, because everything is energy, your thoughts are energy. If you're focusing on the fact that you have no money, or you focus on the fact that you have no well-being, because we just talked about collapsing the wave, if your focus is what you do not have, you're right. Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So whatever you are focusing on, that's your intention. It gets bigger and bigger. That's the momentum. And so if you have a subconscious belief, maybe you grow up and your family said, well, you got to share the bathtub water. We don't have enough water to go around for all these kids, or we don't have enough money to buy the groceries or to pay the bill. You definitely have some, I would call it residual subconscious patterning vibration that says there's no other possibility that something else could be my experience. So this is where we start to look at the curiosity. This is one of my 3 C's in my coaching, and curiosity is one of them. Because we have an ego, because our ego is just part of our nature and our being that wants to keep us safe and small, which means anytime you go to supersede and evolve and become more knowledgeable and aware about who you are, what lights you up, what makes you feel alive, your ego is going to pull out all the stops to say, you are dumb, you are stupid, this was never going to work, you don't have the money to do, like, all of the things.
Yeah.
Which happened to me when I started to try to figure out, why am I so upset? And so, because we know that, it's like, okay, hey, good job, you're doing what you're supposed to. But since I know this, I can come over here and say, okay, well, if I'm curious, that when we become curious, what we do is we get instant access to this field, this quantum where infinite possibilities lie.
Mm.
Because what happens when you go from this will never work out and you're the victim, and you're like, you're not asking the question, instead you say, what if just for this one day, what if just for today, even for 20 minutes, what if I just had a different belief about abundance? What if I afforded myself just 20 minutes to think about, well, what does abundance even mean to me? Maybe it means like I could walk down the street on my own two legs. Maybe it means I can pay for all of my utilities in 1 month. Maybe it means, because it means something different to you than it means to me, to your followers.
Yeah.
So it instantly shifts the energy. And because everything is energy again, and law of attraction, you in seconds change the possible outcome because you're expecting something to be different. And so you literally plug in and tap in. And when you do that and you tap into your imagination and the playfulness and the creativity, solutions come to you where before all you saw were blockages, doors, rejection.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally that subtle and that simple. When you allow yourself the opportunity to just for 20 minutes,
Just
what if?
see.
What if?
You know, I just took a little screenshot. That's why that made a little boot. Because it was just so juicy. I had to take a picture to commemorate it. But, you know, I think about, there are so many directions that we could go in this conversation. And the first thing that I want to say is, like, the first time that I realized that I wasn't running my own ship, I wasn't driving the bus. I wanted to drive the bus, but I wasn't, I was on a meditation retreat. And, you know, it was a 7-day silent Vipassana meditation retreat. And it was cold. It was in Richmond, Virginia. It was freezing. And we spent a lot of time walking, you know, and then sitting and then walking and then sitting. And on this particular day, I was really working to get kind of like to bring my champions around me, because I was feeling like I needed a little support. And at that time, I think I had been such a lone ranger and pushing my way through the world, obviously working out of my own limiting beliefs and causes and conditions, that I didn't notice all of these things, people, beings, entities that were guiding me, that I was just like pushing my way through and I wasn't really watching. Right. And I will never, ever forget, I was walking down the road back towards like the complex, and it was kind of windy. And when I had that realization of like, oh my gosh, and I was like sending prayers out to all these beings, whether they were alive or dead, that had been in my life, and thanking them. I was like, thank you for showing up for me when I couldn't show up for myself. And right at that moment, a gigantic branch fell out of the tree and landed about 3 feet in front of my feet. And I just stopped and I was like, got it, loud and clear. Thank you for reminding me that this is how I need to move forward. And, I'm sure that we all, depending on where we are on our own personal growth journey of how we are letting these things in, we have moments like that, and I was even just thinking of like all the things since I've learned to like let go and trust and be aware and allow, how many things like, and I'll use a simple, like I'm riding horses again, and I hadn't ridden. I used to be a professional trainer like 20 something years ago. And then I just like sold everything. I was like, I'm out of here. I'm never doing this again. This is awful. And really horrible things. And I was like, you know what? If it's time, it will present itself to me. And I was starting to get itchy towards the end of 2023. I started like looking at horses and donkeys on Instagram and like snuggling their faces. And I'm like, oh, I'm getting itchy. I think it's time. So around Christmas time, I put out the feelers to a bunch of my friends in the business that are still doing it all these years later, or friends that I have that still ride. And man, the resounding connection, I sent out to 4 people. One was so overexcited and overjoyed. My whole body was like, oh, that's where I'm going. And the other ones were excited for me, but they weren't in that same energetic way. And, I think that was like, okay, that's where I'm going. I just knew it. There was just a connection, right? And
Mhm.
so that's all to say, that positive state. Now, tell me a little bit, because the first thing I think that people want to know. So that in my work, I work a lot with people that have chronic health issues. So
Mhm.
gut related and chronic health issues. And some of these people have had this since they were born or since they were really young. So they could be in their 50s or 60s or 70s and have had this for a very long time. So they're seeing life through this lens of being unwell.
Mhm.
However, then I also have some people that have been fine, fine, fine most of their life. And then all of a sudden they get a diagnosis or something. And now they're faced with big changes. So, what I can hear some people wondering, and I'm wondering myself,
Mhm.
when you're faced with the daily task of being unwell or having to focus on all of those things, like let's say, since I work with SIBO, and autoimmune disease, let's say someone wakes up every day and they're like, what can I eat today? Like, is it better? Is it worse? Do I have gas? Will I eat that? Will it give me gas? Will it give me bloat? Like, will this ever get better? Or someone with chronic fatigue, give us some idea and tips, because I wrestle with this all the time, because I never name the condition for my body. Like, if I experienced something, I never said my something. I would say in my body this, or something to detach it. But give us
Mhm.
just a little bit of an idea of like how you work with using that positivity, like you just said, even for 20 minutes a day, to invite something else.
Mhm. Well, I have a very, I would call it radical, a very different approach to most things. And so one of my favorite questions, again, is, wherever you're focusing, that is going to be your experience because of law of attraction. And so if you're waking up every day and all you're thinking about is how bad you feel and how you have this label or whatever condition it is, right?
Mhm.
My favorite question to ask is, who cares? Okay, you have this sounds very radical and it might seem abrupt. However, um, you get to decide. Again, when we make a decision, the particle or the wave collapses and it creates an experience. And so it to me, it does not matter what you have done every single day of your life up until right now on 111. The only thing that matters is, what do you want? Do
Mm.
you want to feel better? And if so, really get clear. And sometimes we're so in the weeds, we've felt so bad for so long, we can't possibly imagine. However, if you really want it, it's possible. You actually have to want it. And there's always a payoff for our choices, every single one of them. So we actually have to want it. And if you want it, it is completely on the table. It is up for your receiving. And so I would focus on, instead of what you've been practicing your whole life or the whole last 6 years or whatever, imagine waking up. In yoga, we say we come with a beginner's mind. If you had never been to planet Earth before, if you have never had your carcass, this body, what would you want to try? What would you want to feel? Would it be like, oh, I want to feel like my shoulders away from my ears. I want my belly to feel like soft and supple. I want my spine to feel like silk. Like, let yourself go there, because if you can imagine it, guess what? You can experience it. And the way that you do this is you start to look for evidence in any area of your life that feels sexy to you. So here is an example. Before Roger Bannister ran a sub 4-minute mile, people said it was not humanly possible. He did all of this mindset training, he did all of this physical training, and he ran a mile in less than 4 minutes. It wasn't even months later, other people started running a sub 4-minute mile. Why? Well, because somebody had evidence that it was possible. So I want people to start looking at other examples of
Evidence of healing.
radical success. I mean, radical remission. I mean, if you take 10 people and you give them a diagnosis of cancer, they will all have radically different outcomes based on what they think about what does this mean. So start asking yourself the question, what does it mean that I have SIBO? What does this mean about me? Where is the opportunity? Like, what if I could, if I could just change one thing, what would it be? And start to play around with, like, how would I feel instead in my body? And start imagining, okay, if I want my belly to feel less bloated or less crampy or less tight, could you imagine yourself having that experience? Because here's the other incredible thing about the mind. You have mirror neurons in your brain. If you mentally rehearse something in your mind, the same neurons that fire if you're physically doing, let's say, a bicep exercise, the same neurons that fire when you're actively doing that, like in the real world, they're firing even if you're just rehearsing it in your brain. This is why all Olympic athletes do this.
Mhm.
So by the time you go to do it, like lift the thing or do the free throw, it's easy because you've already done it a million times in your brain. So it's as if you have already done it. So you start using your mind, and what do you want to feel? What do you want to see? And play it out in your mind and rehearse it in the morning. Because when you wake up, back to law of attraction and manifestation, the only time you're not attracting anything is while you're asleep. So the moment that you wake up, your mind and your energy field is very there's less momentum, because usually you go to whatever you go to bed thinking or feeling, you wake up, you just pick up where you left off. So when you wake up, you're like, today is a new slate. This is a clear slate. I'm gonna start this day. You could say, I am at ease, or state an affirmation, or maybe you could sing a song. Everybody has different ways that they like to do or sense or feel things. Maybe you can listen to binaural beats or some relaxing music, or maybe you could dance or do something. Claim the intention that you are wishing to experience, because if you don't, the universe will bring it to you, and you literally become like a pinball in the pinball machine.
Mm.
You have to claim it. And if you don't know what you want, recall, like, what are the things that guaranteed your joy, just like no matter what? Like for me, running in the rain and swinging on a swing is like, dude, let's go.
Yeah.
I mean, making mud pies. Like, what did you do when you were younger that you were just like, yep, no matter what, if I do this or I think about this or I practice this, I'm like, this is awesome. Let's do this. Try some of that. Ask yourself, what would be the best thing for me to do today? What if I was curious, what would make this better? Maybe it's some essential oils, maybe it's a bath, maybe it's eggs. I don't know. Like, be curious.
I like I like how you tap into the self-care there. And I think that visualization and imagination is like, that's how I live my whole life. And even just like when I travel, and I'm an athlete, I'm a distance mountain biker. So when I like think about going on the trail, I just run through how I'm riding and how my body is feeling. And one of the big things that got me through SIBO was actually imagining what my body would feel like without it. And that was in like my energy levels, how I felt in my body, my mental focus, like how I was showing up around people in events. Because the more, like you said, the juiciness, the more that we can pick up on What does it feel like? What does it look like? Who are we with? What are we doing? What's that joy? And, sometimes I have my clients like find a positive memory in their past, especially if they're having so much trouble visioning the future because they're feeling that they can't see it. So I'm like, okay, bring that joy up from a memory in the past. And then that helps you then go to the future because, you said that earlier about, when you realized that you were feeling so bad, and you said, but then I had guilt over what, and I can't remember your exact words, but basically the gist of it was like, why am I feeling bad? Right? Guilt. And wait, maybe you didn't say it this way, but I have everything. Why would I be feeling bad that I don't feel great? Like, I think as women, sometimes we can be programmed into this limiting belief that
Oh,
we can't have it all, that we have to work hard or that we have to
absolutely.
sacrifice things.
Yeah.
But I I often remind my clients and myself that when we are serving our highest and best good and we're full of joy and love and visioning and going positive, then that is going to actually ripple out and bring that to all of the people around us too. Um, Even like when I work with a client, I'm always holding that vision of them as healed, as feeling their best, as doing all those things that they want. Like I'm holding that space for them. And I think it's so important to remember that it's actually the least selfish thing to do when we care for ourselves and we find joy and fulfill our ultimate possibility for ourselves, because then look at, we just radiate that to everyone and we make everybody's life better, not in an egocentric way, but in a simple, energetic, human to human, let's make life better for all of us way. I mean, it sounds like you agree, but anything to add there?
Can we cuss on here? Yes. Like, here's the thing. I mean, to me, like putting yourself last, like that paradigm is so like 1994. It's so like self-care is so sexy. And as a woman, in my experience, if you are born with a uterus, if you are born with the parts to create, carry a human, just by you, my love, just by you doing the work vicariously, you are healing at least at a minimum 100 people in your inner circle, because we are the influencers, we are the household managers, we are the community people. So when you do the work, 100 people instantly are also receiving the benefits. And it's, to me, parenting is a spiritual calling. So I take it with a lot of integrity and intention. And so many people are confused because their parents are saying one thing and doing another thing, and there's all this incongruence. It's like, well, wait, are you making me wear the helmet when you're riding me on the piccolo thing and you're not wearing a helmet? What's up with that?
Yeah, it's like a disconnect.
It's like, so do as I say, not as I do. It's like there needs to be alignment, and it's so important. And it's easy for me to say these things now. I struggled for 7 years with dystonia, and I was pissed off. I was miserable. I was isolated. I didn't want to tell anybody what was going on because it literally took me 7 years to process what was happening. And so if you are suffering, listen, I got your ticket. I understand. And if you want it to be different, you have to claim it. You have to want it, and you have to be willing to see things differently. Yeah. And that's one of my favorite mantras. Show me what I need to see. Let me hear what I need to hear, feel what I need to feel, and know what I need to know for my highest good. And I don't ask specifically for what I'm supposed to do or know, because we don't know what we need to know. Mm-mm. And so when we're open and we surrender the when and the how, again, the quantum field is here. It's like a buffet every day. It's, are you coming or not? It's, I mean, it's totally, nobody's, okay. So when we all wake up, this is the biggest gift that I have recently come to become aware of, is that every day when we wake up, nobody is opening our crown chakra and pouring in some liquid and saying, okay, Karen, this is what you have to believe today and every day for the rest of your life. No, 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 no. Like we get to decide what things have meaning and what does that mean in our life, and is it working for us? And if it's not, what might we do to shift it just a teeny little bit? Like, the way that you train for a marathon is one step, 1 mile at a time. And if you make a micro shift over time, it creates a macro shift. And that is how you do it. This is baby steps, 1 minute, the next minute, the next minute. And it's a practice, and it takes muscle and practice and memory and practice and practice and practice. And pretty soon you're like, oh my God, you remember that time? I could like barely get out of bed, and I couldn't drive a car. I mean, I was on disability. Like I get it.
Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, if you feel, now I want
Yeah.
you to only share in ways that feel okay to you, but tell
Oh
us a
no,
little bit about
totally.
your story.
Yeah. So I want to be, again, an example. Like, I was in the darkest nights of the soul for 7 years. And here's the other thing: when you're so in the weeds, you don't know you're in the weeds. Okay. Until you're walking in the woods on a retreat and the tree falls out and you're like, okay, I'm paying attention.
Totally.
and so I'm a very extroverted person, and I just love talking and being with other people. And I was like, I started, well, first of all, I started working from home as a nurse case manager, which was great. And then at one point, I could, my mobility to turn my head to the left was so limited, I could not drive a car safely. And it's like you start losing these privileges that we all take for granted. And I was like, okay, well, what does this mean that I can't drive a car? What does this mean? I have to have disability accommodations to do my work. And it was like, I felt like, why is this happening to me? What did I do? I'm the manifestation queen. What the heck did I do to manifest this wackadoodle business? And because I know that everything is energy, I'm open to all possibilities. And I'm open to the fact that this came in also means the fact that this can just spontaneously go away too. And so the work that I was doing, meditation, changing my beliefs, really getting intentional, what do I actually want? I mean, I was stuck like this for like 2 years.
Wow.
And so I'm also very conscious about beauty and looking nice. And when you look nice, you feel nice. I didn't want to go into public. I did want to be with my friends or my family. I don't want to talk about it. And so I just had to get sick and tired enough for the pendulum to be like, yep, I'm not playing this gig anymore. What am I going to do about it? And I just, baby step. You cannot go from perclumped to everything is fabulous. It's a process. And so little by little, and only individuals can know, but they have to ask, what can I focus on in this moment that makes me feel good? So like, environment is massive. I mean, massive. So if you can have little things in your space that ring your bells, like I love the earth. I mean, I have this freaking selenite spray. I have plants everywhere. I love texture. I'm into things that make me feel good and luxurious and sexy and all this stuff. So start asking yourself and giving yourself permission, like and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money or even any money. It's just what is it? Is it music? Is it incense? Is it a picture of our family? Is it the great outdoors, like the window? I mean, it doesn't need to be complicated. It's just starting to pay attention to these little things. And pretty soon the momentum starts going in the direction of, dude, I have the blueprint for healing. I believe in the possibility. All you have to believe is in the possibility or the potential for something to be different than it is. And it can be your experience. And so, and the more fun and the more curious you are about it along the way, the faster time speeds up to bring it to you. Because when you're struggling the whole way, and I know about struggle because I did it for 50 years, it slows things way down.
Way down. Yeah. Way down.
Because it's that low frequency. So you just keep attracting oh, well, I just blew my shoulder and now my car won't start. And now the water heater blew up. And like, what? What?
Yeah, and those things, and it's important to note that those things will happen on the
Yes.
journey, but
Mhm.
we get to decide how we relate to that. We can, like, if we're like, oh man, the water heater just broke, and I just stubbed my toe, and my dog has fleas, and my car won't start. Like, those things suck. They do.
Yep. Mhm.
And our relationship with it is really what portends the next steps. Like if we wallow and we get angry or we get frustrated or pissed or whatever, the solution won't present itself, first of all. But second of all, more of that will come, in my opinion. So when we start to just, I mean, maybe that's not the right words. But
Yeah.
it's like, I can figure this out. Let's move on and see what's next. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Here's a great tip from one of my favorite teachers, Luke Seward. He's a renowned stress management expert. And he says a BMW, bitch, moan, and whine, if you need to, set your timer, whatever, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, and have a BMW party. Like, get it all out. Just complain, just talk about how bad it sucks, and just get it all out, and then carry on. Like, and then
Okay.
because it is important to acknowledge the suck, or whatever you want to call it, the being down in the doldrums, the dark night of the soul. However, the length of time that you hang out there is completely optional, and it's completely your call. No one can tell you got to spend 7 nights and 7 days here.
Right.
That's not how this works. And so another example of looking at evidence, Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning. Dude, he was in the concentration camps. He was focusing on the people that were giving away their last piece of bread to other people. He was focusing on the good in the other people that were there, which is, I'm sure, why he was able to survive. Like, what are you focusing on? It's totally, no one is like holding your head and saying you have to only look here. Like, let that go, because that's a bunch of malarkey. Is not, I mean, maybe that's true in some cases. I find it hard to believe. I'm not buying that story. Right? Like,
Yeah.
so there are so many examples. Find the one that rings your bells. Like, look for, every champion has a story of struggle, immense struggle. And the work is never done. That's another thing about this journey, is that it's never about arriving at some destination. It's, are you having fun along the way? Because nobody came here to be mad or to be pissed off or to be angry the whole time. Nobody signed up
No.
for that.
No.
Nobody signed up for that. And I think the only reason we're all here is because we had a real bad case of amnesia when we came into our because it can be pretty turbulent if you're
It
not
can.
careful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It can be super turbulent. I think you and I could talk forever.
I know.
I think this has been so fun. I mean, a couple things remembering, just kind of going back. I love the seeing things with curiosity. The two feelings were either going in love or fear, and all the rest is gravy. Love has the positive energy, fear obviously doesn't. And then the infinite abundance. I always go to that. And then the potential, seeing the potential for something to be different than it is, I think is so important. And then finding evidence of that, whether it's evidence in your own self, but then, as you say, like evidence of other people going through radical remission and things like that. I mean, there's books written on that. There's all sorts of things. So I think that's really awesome. Let me ask you a couple questions just as we kind of like slowly wrap up. Um, if you were like one thing you would tell your younger self, I know that's such a cliche, but you're like, I'm 50 and I'm just figuring this out. When I'm 47 and we're all figuring it out slowly on our own time frame. But if you had like a word of wisdom to your younger self, knowing what you know now, what would you say?
I'd say you did a damn good job and you are amazing. High five is what I would say. Good job.
Awesome. Celebrate.
Yeah, totally. Like, way to go, girl. Like, you set this party up really well.
There you go. Awesome. All right. One last question thing. You know what? I like love celebration, and I know you do too. Tell me about what you celebrate and why.
Oh, I mean, I celebrate the fact that like so one of the things that I can experience sometimes with this dystonia is it's literally like I'll just be eating and then I go to swallow my food and it just doesn't
Doesn't
kind of
go.
doesn't work. It's like so I celebrate on a regular basis the fact that I can eat, taste, and swallow my food on my own accord. Like that's massive. I
Mhm.
celebrate the fact that I have awesome dry clean clothes. I celebrate the fact that I have this awesome technology, and I celebrate connection. I celebrate when the poop is on the fan, because if we do not experience contrast, my favorite teacher, Abraham Hicks, if we do not experience when things aren't going well, we will never know how we want it to be when it's going well. Like we have to experience the light and the dark.
Mhm.
That is what being a human is. And the more we can lean into the discomfort and the scary emotions and the lemons, the richer your whole entire experience. So I would say, instead of being angry about a physical symptom, can you instead have gratitude that your body is actually, that's a communication mechanism. It's telling you what is up for you, and you need to look at something. And maybe it just means you need to be more compassionate with yourself. Hello.
Uh-huh. Yeah, for sure. I love
Like,
that.
yeah. So if you can celebrate all of it, and I know this well because I was the very person, like I would run as far away as possible from like the scary emotion. I call them the scary emotions,
Mhm.
anxiety, fear, shame, blah blah blah, all the things. And now what I've learned is that's where the diamonds are, that's where the miracles are. If you pull the discomfort closer, it has epic amounts of wisdom and miracles for you. And so if you do not afford yourself that experience, you're not going to get the miracles and the magic and the rainbows.
So
That's
true.
where the work is. There's not, there's no bypass, there's no magic bullet, there's no red little pill. The work is through the thing.
Mhm.
And if you can do that and have fun while you're doing it, dude, you're good.
You're
That's
good.
that's the secret sauce.
Totally. That's really funny because the meditation that I was working on previously to the limb falling out of the branch, the day before, was noticing my reaction every time my senses picked up pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral.
Yep.
And I mean, this is like 12 years ago or something. And I realized that every time a sense came in that was unpleasant, I
Mhm.
would go through hoops to reposition that into pleasant. Like I would like run around the building and go over the tower and whatever just to not experience anything unpleasant. Or I would, and then as I mean, going to a retreat is very tricky for the mind when you're
Yep.
just in it for, 7 straight days. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I started tracing to see all the things, the actually unpleasant heartache I had caused myself by trying to avoid that initial unpleasant. And then all of a sudden, my brain would make that story of this unpleasant. And then all of a sudden, off to the races. And, one of the biggest things, at least I've had to work through, is like that recognition that, first of all, unpleasant is okay. It's good. It's a learning opportunity. It's juicy. Like, it's where we can really learn and grow. And yeah, it can be sometimes unpleasant. And
Yeah.
also, sometimes that's okay. We can handle it.
Mhm.
And also, there's a time that when you notice it's unpleasant, it just goes away. It just
Right.
is a no thing anymore. So, I think it's fascinating. I just really enjoyed chatting with you today. Thank you so much for your time. And I love that you overcame that limiting belief of someone telling you needed to be more quiet, because yeah, you're lovely and glorious just the way you are. And I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you and taking the time.
It is my pleasure. Thank you. Yes, we have great vibes and we could talk for centuries. So thank you for the opportunity, and I trust and intend that this will benefit one human in a glorious way. And so it is. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.